Hi, Gary Stearman, coming to you from the studios of Prophecy Watchers, and today I just kind of feel led to talk about the Great Tribulation. Mostly because 2 or 3 times on the internet lately, that wonderful internet, like a river of, well, you don't know what's coming down the river next. Some of it not so good. But information, maybe too much information, and a lot of it now seems to be Christians saying that there's not going to be a 7-year tribulation. In fact, I have seen a couple of times lately people saying, and I'm pretty much quoting here, Jesus didn't say that there would be a great tribulation that would last 7 years. Now, that led me to think, I really would like to talk about how Jesus did talk about great tribulation, and in effect, he said that it would last 7 years. Where do I get that? Well, I get it from Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse, where Jesus says, starting in verse 14, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness to all nations, and then the end shall come. It's pretty clear what Jesus is talking about. He says, the end shall come. What is the end? Well, the end would be the cleanup time. The cleanup time is the Great Tribulation. That is to say, the world has been allowed more or less free run for the last couple thousand years, but that's not going to last forever. There will be an ending in which things are wrapped up, if you will. The next verse says, and this is Jesus quoting Daniel. Verse 15, when ye therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. And of course, Paul later filled this in, so we would be able to understand exactly what Jesus was saying. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. So Jesus says, there will be an end. And it's going to resemble what Daniel called the abomination of desolation. And it's going to involve the holy place. Well, there's only one holy place, and that's in the temple, which did stand, and once again will stand during the tribulation, on the Temple Mount. And Jesus then says, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. And he's speaking to Israel here, obviously, because Judea is Israel. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. In other words, this thing is going to be abrupt when it comes. No warning. Boom, there it is. And woe to them that are with child and have babies in those days. But pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Again, he's talking to Jews in Israel. And now I'm coming to verse 21, which is where I was headed from the beginning. Listen to what Jesus said. He said, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. He's talking about something that comes absolutely quickly, without warning, at a time when there is an abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. There has to be a holy place, that is, the temple has to be rebuilt. There has to be an Antichrist called the abomination of desolation. He's quoting Daniel here, but Jesus uses the term great tribulation. In Greek, thlipsis megali, tribulation, great. Actually uses those words. And he has begun this statement by saying, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. Is there a holy place on the Temple Mount right now? No. Is there an abomination of desolation? No. That means that we have to wait for something to take place. What was Jesus quoting from? He was quoting from Daniel chapter 9. the prophecy of the 70 weeks. Speaking of the Antichrist, and there's no doubt about this in Daniel 9:27, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week, now the week here is a Shavua, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. A Shavua is 7 years. In the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. What is the sacrifice and oblation? It's what Jesus was talking about when he said the abomination of desolation. A foul and unclean abomination standing in the Holy of Holies in the temple, which is then rebuilt. And then you read this: he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate. That is the abomination of desolation. And it is horrific. It's unclean. It is evil. It is wicked. It is dark power from on high, even till the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out on the desolate. And so this is Daniel talking about what Jesus quotes and then speaks of as great tribulation, and he actually uses the term great tribulation. Some people have said, well, that's just the last half of the 7 years. It could be, but the tribulation is 7 years long. Daniel said so. It's a Shavua. And I guarantee you, I've read Revelation, and the first 3.5 years of that 7-year period are no picnic. So, Jesus, and this is the false quote that's going around on the web, Jesus didn't say that there would be a great tribulation that would last 7 years. Well, let's talk about the 7 years, the Shavua. There's another thing going around on the internet that's saying that the rapture cannot occur in the year 2017. Why not? Because it is said the rapture must begin at the start of a new Shemitah cycle, which is a 7-year cycle. The last Shemitah cycle began September 13th, 2015. The next Shemitah cycle will not begin until 7 years later, September of 2022. And therefore, it's being taught that the rapture cannot occur until around 2022, because the rapture occurs at the beginning of that 7-year Shavua. Some are saying that must be a Shemitah, and therefore you can calculate the dates on the Jewish calendar. You can transpose those into our Gregorian calendar, and there you go. The rapture can't begin before September of 2022. Well, the other thing that we believe in is imminency, the doctrine of imminency, as taught all the way back to the days of Paul and the apostles. They looked for the coming of Christ in their day. The first century, the second century, the elders of the church, the fathers of the church were still looking for the imminency of Christ's return. The Dark Ages interposed themselves. Coming out of the Dark Ages into the 19th century, men began to wake up and say, wow, it's looking like the end times. John Nelson Darby said, it looks as though Israel is going to come back into the land. Here's a fascinating historical fact. Darby died in 1882, and that was the very first year of the return of the Jews to Israel. 11 Jews from Kharkov, Russia, went to Israel, and they established the little town of Petah Tikva, the Gate of Hope. And the Gate of Hope essentially was the gate of hope for the end times, because Israel has since become a nation, and having become a nation, everybody's talking. Will they rebuild the temple? We know they're training a priesthood right now, and we know they're preparing for temple worship. It's not going to be a good experience. We know that from the prophecy of Daniel, because the holy place is going to be inhabited by an invader, a false Messiah. And we call him the Antichrist. And that's another thing that's being floated on the internet, that the Antichrist is not the man of sin. Well, I beg your pardon. He is. Of course, you find the word Antichrist 4 times in the epistles of John, and it's very clear from what John says that he is speaking of the type of the coming one, the one who is going to come and stand up and pose as the Messiah. And so what do we have? We have what a thorough study of the Bible has taught us over the years. We have Israel back in the land. We have Israel very quietly training a priesthood. We hear from time to time that they're planning a temple. With that temple would come a holy place. And Jesus said in Matthew 24, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. It's all down in black and white, or in the case of my red letter King James, it's down here in red and white. The words of Jesus, he actually used the term Great Tribulation. And he timed it with the appearance of the man of sin and the abomination of Daniel. Is there an imminent rapture of the church? Yes, and we don't have time to talk about that today, but the Bible is very clear that the church will not be present to see these horrific developments spoken of by Jesus and Daniel the prophet. Instead, the Bible is very clear about the fact that the church is going to be gone, taken up in a moment, twinkling of an eye, just prior to the Great Tribulation, which could happen at any moment. It doesn't have to wait for a Shemitah cycle. It does not have to wait for September of 2022, for example. We could be gone before this airs. But just wanted to say that we're always teaching the Bible from a position that we adopted decades ago, and it's based upon a very thorough study of Scripture and of people, places, and things logically laid out in the Bible, easily understood if you know what you're reading. So what would I advise you to do today? I advise you to look moment by moment for the catching away of the church. I do. So keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter, or follow us at facebook.com/prophecywatchers. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.